All right. We are back Monday night. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to come hang out with me and ask great questions. Run it down for you guys here like we do every Monday and Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We got Facebook, YouTube, X, and over here on TikTok running down for you guys tonight. And there's lots of fun things going on. So I'm down here in Austin. We have a private dinner that we're putting on tomorrow, and we'll have about 100 people there, which will be fun. A little golf at the country club here in Austin. Some big name players that live in this neck of the woods will be attending. Very cool. Lots of people from Carbon 3 and Carbon 2 in the mastermind also coming in. Enjoying the event. So again, shout out to everybody that's participating. Excited to see you guys tomorrow. And I think it'll be an enjoyable event for everybody. So aside from that, what about the macro? Because I know that's what you guys show up for. Man, oh man, you've got yen continue to climb against the USD. Sitting really close to 160. We saw it pull back yesterday a little bit, but we are back up again today with oil continue to rise, priced in yen, around $17,000. A little bit earlier this evening, we've pulled back a little bit to 15.5 here. I think that's a healthy pullback. I do think it will continue higher. I do think that there's going to be continual pressure on the Bank of Japan. They really only have three options at this point. So they're backed into a corner. They need the yen to appreciate against the dollar. And the ways that they can accomplish that are, one, they can start shorting oil, which if they do that and it produces a short squeeze and oil continues higher, they end up in a very, very bad spot. Second to that, they can start dumping U.S. Treasuries, right? If they're selling off U.S. Treasuries, that puts pressure on the dollar, increases the value of the yen against the dollar. That's another option. That also would basically make it imperative that we start launching stable coins here in the US in order to be able to drive that demand domestically so that the Fed doesn't have to print money in order to buy those treasuries. And the last thing they could do would be to raise interest rates, which is what I've been saying the whole time. That's what they need to do. They need to raise interest rates to about 1.5. They're currently at 75 basis points, or 75% of 1%. They've become very hawkish. They are saying they are going to raise rates. They're going to step in. If there's volatility in the FX market, they're going to do what they can to mitigate the risk for oil continue to rise because of the conflicts in the Middle East. And we've just had a G7 meeting. The largest economies in the world have put their world leaders in a room in order to discuss what's about to go down here, which is inevitably the reverse carry trade unwinding, which will be hugely deflationary. So right now, everything it's inflationary, right? If energy costs go up, things cost more to move, things cost more to produce, things cost more in general. The problem with the reverse carry trade unwinding is you're going to have liquidity sucked out of markets. So to the tune of about $10 trillion coming back to the Bank of Japan. Warren Buffett and the Fed stockpiling yen at this point in order to be able to navigate that situation when it inevitably does come to pass. Those are all tells for me, right? Like, don't watch, what they say, watch what they do. They are stockpiling yen to be liquidity providers in that situation. So we know it's coming. It's just how long do we have until that's going to be the case? Your guess is as good as mine. Unfortunately, these indicators have been around for a while, and we still haven't seen things transpire here. I don't know what they're waiting on. Like I mentioned last week, it could be that they codify, something around the stable coins as far as yield goes, or at least they come to an agreement that's going to be in the Clarity Act. I do not think we need to get the Clarity Act across the line in order to see the implementation of these networks and protocols. April 1st, you have the OCC giving banks the ability to hold digital assets on their balance sheet. Big deal. Big deal. Will that cause price appreciation? Who knows? But it should cause more demand for the assets, Solana, Bitcoin, ETH, and XRP, which is what the BIS is going to be designating, titles for, or what they are here in Q2 of 2026. So, all of that's in play. Seems very timely that this would be occurring now, and that it likely will play out in the not too distant future in order to roll in this new financial paradigm. Bank of England also has a go live date for their new financial system in April of 2026. Who would have known? All these things kind of culminating right at the same time. So very interesting. We'll see how April goes. We are here at the end of March, just the last couple of days here before we get to April Fool's Day. Hopefully you guys are celebrating, pull a prank on somebody on Wednesday. I will be here with y'all that evening, and maybe I'll have an April Fool's for you. So that's where the macro is. That's where things are at. We will run it down as we always do with questions. And again, appreciate you taking time out of your evening to come hang out here. If you do get value from this, please like, subscribe, share. It does help the algorithm in the channel, and it is much appreciated. 100% says borrowing through DWP, interest rate, LTV, terms, ranges. So we have a couple of different providers that we work with over there, Digital Wealth Partners. We have Maple, we have Arch Lending, we have Galaxy, and then hopefully a prime broker in the near future. You might imagine who that might be. I'll talk about somebody that I had on my podcast toward the end of this. But when it comes to interest rates, LTV, and terms, it just depends on the asset. It's a wide range. So if it's Bitcoin, it's going to be a lower interest rate just because there's more liquidity in that. And it's, blue chip, according to a lot of people, they underwrite the risk lower. So they're willing to give you close to 70, 80% LTV on your Bitcoin, especially right now in the bottom of the market, or what they think is the bottom of the market. People tend to be a little bit more aggressive on the LTV that they're willing to give. Interest rates, Bitcoin, again, depending on the amount of Bitcoin, I've seen as low as 7.5% or 8%. I've seen people cross collateralize their Bitcoin or their ETH or their Solana or their XRP for a mortgage. That's a big deal that just happened here recently with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, allowing for in-kind transfers for down payments of crypto to be able to purchase properties. Awesome. You can also cross collateralize the property with your crypto in order to be able to get a loan if you want to do it that way. It's double leverage. Not saying it's the best thing. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying it's an opportunity that's out there, and you should do your own research and make your own decisions. Maybe speak with a financial advisor or a professional before you make that call. So back to the interest rates. On XRP, all the way up to 15%, can be lower depending on the amount that you're putting up. LTV on XRP is going to be somewhere between 40 and 60%. Depends on the lender. Ranges tend to be shorter term. It's not going to be multi-year lending on these things. The longest loans that I've seen on crypto are 24 months, 2 years, kind of at a maximum. Most of them are 1 year or less. Tend to be 3 to 6 months a lot of the time, because they're looking to turn that capital, and it's hard money lending, basically. Private credit, some of the stuff that we're seeing having a lot of problems right now, lending against crypto or other collateral. So that's where we're currently at. I think that that's going to change in the near future. I think by the end of 2026, we will be very close to prime. Hopefully we see lower interest rates from the Fed toward the end of the year. We've got a couple, Fed chairs coming out and saying, Fed members, not chair, Jerome Powell, but a couple of members saying there will be decreasing rates in September and December this year, 25 basis points apiece. So as we see rates come down, the lending rates should come down, but also your yield on your stable coins or your banking deposits, all those things are going to be a little bit less if the rate comes down here. And this person's asked what LTV is. Loan to value ratio. Sorry, I forget not everybody knows all these acronyms. I should do better to make sure that those are explicit. So yeah, loan to value. Basically, if you were going to get a 50% LTV or 50% loan to value, let's say you put up $1 million, you with the 50% LTV. So again, XRP being 40 to 60, Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana maybe up to 80%. Just depends on the lender and their underwriting. But I do think, again, the LTVs will continue to go up. More, you'll be able to borrow more against your crypto. And I do think the interest rates are going to come down as the market gets more competitive and the banks move in here once they can hold assets and the OCC gives them the green light. Jake Real says, hey, Jake, is the Japanese versus Brent and Japanese versus dollar being manipulated right now? Appear when the yen drops when markets open in Japan. Thoughts? Yeah. So there's yield curve control, right? Any bank, any central bank that's looking to protect the value of their currency or move markets in a certain direction will buy bonds in order to be able to drive rates down, or sell bonds in order to drive rates up. Just depends on what they want to do. So either one of those is yield curve control, but they are the issuer of the bonds and they can buy and sell. There has to be buyers and sellers on the other side of those transactions. There has to be demand for things on either direction. There needs to be a marketplace, and if nobody's willing to buy them, it may backfire on them. We see auctions on a regular basis for different central banks and the treasuries. This last treasury auction for the 2-year on the treasury in the U.S., not good. We saw a significant rise in the 2-year treasury yield during that auction because nobody wanted to buy it at the lower interest rate. They thought it was, going to trend higher, or the risk that they're willing to take in purchasing it wasn't enough at 4%. They needed closer to 5% before they were willing to take the risk on purchasing those bonds. So all that being said is I do think it is manipulated. I do think they're using yield curve control. I think they're going to use options and straddles and puts and any other derivatives at their disposal in order to be able to manipulate markets to be able to kick the can. But at some point, kicking the can is not going to work any longer. And hopefully they don't put themselves in too bad of a corner before that happens. Charity says, hey, Jake, Carbon 2, awesome. Good to see you. Laughlin, LLC, Digital Wealth Partners client. Thank you for working with us. I appreciate the confidence and the trust. They say, how do you get real value from Carbon 2 without spending hours sorting through all the noise? It's a good question. So we have a call every Tuesday night in Carbon 2. And if you attend those, you should be able to discern what's going on. A lot of people ask really good questions about estate planning. It's a little more complex stuff than basic level things, more about, irrevocable trusts, intentionally defective grantor trusts, charitable remainder trusts, life insurance policies, infinite banking. Some of the more complex stuff is what we go over there in Carbon 2. But we also try to meet people where they are. There's also another call on Thursday nights that they do for Carbon 2. It's in the evening. That is more of the beginner stuff. So the Tuesday call is the bit, more advanced stuff. The Thursday call is the, kind of a little bit less complex stuff. So it depends on where you're at. But either one of those calls would be great for you to get on. We have, if you're in Carbon 3, we have something every single night for people in the mastermind. Not every night. Some of it's during the day. Like Mondays, I do 11 a.m. at Central Standard Time. Saturday mornings is when we do those, and then Future has his on Sunday evenings. Do a voice call.
Every day.
Yeah, there's something every day if you're in the highest level in the group. Carbon 2 is pretty close to that. You have access to almost every single day's worth of conversations. I get more out of those. I am always somebody that does better through auditory learning and doing the physical thing versus reading stuff. I've always had, I can do it. Like if I need to read something and study for a test, I wasn't horrible. I was an A and B student, but I've always done better audio and visual versus reading something. So if you have a hard time with that, I would just join the calls and ask questions. If you have, whatever questions, it's an open forum similar to this, and you get all your questions answered.
And most are recorded.
And they're recorded, and you can listen back to them later on. Justin says, hey, Jake, either always here Monday, Wednesday, Longview Computing says the domino theory is dead and Swift is going to use Canton Network. Thought that was funny. Not sure if you've seen it. And he said you like his post thoughts. Look, I take everybody's perspective out there. I don't think I'm the end all be all. I'm always open to listen to other data points and information and other people's thesis. I think it just helps mine, and my critical thinking skills get better. And when I see counter arguments to my argument, I tend to like them because I then get somebody else's perspective, and I don't form an opinion on something unless I can advocate for both sides. There's many times people ask me for things on here, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know enough about it to be able to argue both sides or have an opinion on it. But as far as his post goes, Canton, he actually tagged me in that post. I didn't get a chance to watch his video. I did like that he made the video and tagged me in it. So I haven't had a chance to see what it is yet. But look, Canton's going to be used. Ondo is going to be used. Securitize is going to be used. Oasis Pro Markets is going to be used. Axelar is going to be used. There's all of these different networks and ecosystems that allow for interoperability and tokenization of real-world assets that are going to be facilitating trade, not settlement, of these digital assets. So, depending on if you're tokenizing real estate or private equity or stocks themselves, I think that there's going to be many unique players out there in the market that do that. I mean, you've already seen Ondo has their exchange for stocks. Robinhood has tapped somebody else to tokenize their stuff. Figure, is tokenizing real world assets. You got Securitize partnering with NASDAQ to be able to tokenize their stock exchange. Canton seems like it's with the DTCC and maybe, New York Stock Exchange. There's all these different players, but you're going to need interoperability, and you're going to have to settle back to one unified ledger. It's not going to be multiple ledgers that you're settling back to. It's going to be one unified ledger. And it's not me saying that, right? Like if you want to go listen to somebody that has the authority and power, Larry Fink at the World Economic Forum, he was the one that said it all needs to settle back to one unified ledger. So again, I believe that's XRP. You can do your own research. The XRPL, not XRP. XRP is the token of the XRPL and the values in the protocol. But I believe that it will be that protocol that's used for the back-end settlement of everything globally, and all these other networks will connect to it. And so, again, fine if people have a difference of opinion on that. That's just my opinion. Trish says, in New York, there are no OTC desks to sell after price appreciation. Well, we're going to have to change that. If you work with Digital Wealth Partners, you can do it with us. Set you up a Wyoming LLC, work with Anchorage. They also have a BIT license, I believe, and should be able to facilitate trades for New York residents. I know they have the money transmitter license for Texas and a bunch of other states in order to be able to do that. So, Digital Wealth Partners would be a great way to do that post-price appreciation if there aren't any other options. And we'll continue to advocate for other options as well. We'll talk to Uphold and Kraken and many others. But the NYDFS is pretty stringent on how they want to operate. James, he says, what is Scam's real issue with XRP and Ripple? Why is he so negative? Scams isn't, how do I want to say this? So for those that don't know, I've made another bet at, the opposition to many people around me. I made another bet with Scams that by the end of this year, we will see a $750 XRP. I just took the same terms as the bet last year. And the whole premise behind that bet was to pay back the people that he had won XRP from in other bets. I've been very blessed in my life. I'm in a position to be able to help people. And so I'll backstop those people and they'll get their XRP back one way or the other. So up to 5,000 XRP is that bet. That XRP will be $750 by the end of the year. But Scams is on Twitter. He's an account out there. Scams Detective is what he goes by. Pink Panther is his logo or JPEG or picture. Avatar, I guess is the right word for that. There on Twitter. He is very intelligent. Based on his tone and dictation and the cadence in which he speaks, I don't know if he's related to David Schwartz or not, but there's a lot of corollary between those three components of how they speak. He's very articulate, well-spoken, and coherent in his thought and thesis, the way that he puts things together. I enjoy debates with him. We obviously have very different biases, and I've said this before. If I was in Bitcoin early, I would probably have a stronger bias toward Bitcoin, right? Like if you've made a bunch of money in something, you want it to continue to do well and maintain its status in an ecosystem. I believe that plays into his opinions on things, but he does come well equipped and well prepared to be able to argue his points. I don't think he is nefarious. I have not seen him detect any scams in the whole time that he has been out there. And when asked about detecting scams, he has not been able to identify any scams that he's detected. And he did say that XRP was a security during the lawsuit, which he got wrong. I don't know that he's openly admitted that one, but there are multiple screenshots of him stating that as fact. Well, not as fact. He said, I think in the tweet, it was something to the effect of, it will be very difficult for Ripple to win the lawsuit, and XRP will then be clarified as security. Obviously, he was wrong on that. Ripple did win the lawsuit. I think so. I mean, they had to pay a $50 million fine for the initial sales of their XRP, but they did get clarity that XRP in and of itself is not a security. So, I've made some wrong calls too, right? You guys know that. I'm not perfect, and I don't think I'm the end all be all. And I think Scams is intelligent enough to know that he doesn't know everything, but he has strong opinions about stuff, and he has the discernment to make bets with it. And so I'm willing to take the wager, and hopefully, I think it may go my way this time. Let's see here. We've got Pride. They say, when will the merger into Digital Uphold Group take place? God bless, and thank you for being awesome. We have no intention of merging with Uphold. We definitely want to work with them, right? We have a lot of aligned interests. There's a strong sense of community for the XRP family that's been fostered from Uphold, and for us, obviously, we have significant bias in that direction. And this is probably a good time for my disclaimer, so I'll go ahead and do that real quick. Everything here is for entertainment and educational purposes. Nothing should be taken as financial advice. You should always speak with a financial advisor, a CPA, or lawyer before making any tax, legal, or financial decisions. The opinions I share are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners. So when it comes to Digital Uphold Group, I don't think that's what's going to happen. We would love it if, I think Uphold has some gaps on continuity for, God forbid something happens to you while you have assets on their platform. Up to this point, I think their procedure or protocol has been to liquidate those assets and then allow probate to play out and then pass those assets out based on probate. It's difficult to set up any type of trust account there. They have LLC accounts, which is great. They do have business accounts. That was a big piece of what we worked on with them to be able to launch an R app, which is a white label version of their platform. We will have, lower fees than what you would traditionally get on the Uphold app. You get a bank account for your LLC. There is a monthly fee for our platform versus theirs, but the trading fees are significantly lower. We were able to negotiate those down. And there's still some additional costs for, money transmitter and things for us, but I don't like nickel and diamond people. I just want it to be one flat fee that you know what it is every month, and it's all in, all inclusive. Don't have to worry about it. I don't know if you guys use like Coinbase One or Coinbase Prime, but it's like $100 a month, and they waive your trading fees over there. I don't know if we'll get to that point or not, but we do have a fee, just to cover all of the additional costs that we have, and maintain your LLC. You can do everything in one deal. So you have the LLC, the paperwork, corporate veil, bank account, all of the logistics on moving monies right there. So it can be easily documented, very simple and seamless. We'll continue to add additional features to that application. The long-term vision for that platform is the one unified wealth platform for people that manage their XRP or other digital assets all in one spot, so that you know exactly what's going on and you can keep track of your entire financial life, estate plan, taxes, all of it in one easy-to-use portal. Vegito Black says, hey, Jake, if they pass the Clarity Act and don't give us yield, I think Trump should eliminate capital gains tax on crypto to be fair. Thoughts? My wonderful wife gave me some tea. She's here with me tonight in Austin. I would love both, right? Have your cake and eat it too. Now, as far as yield goes, I don't know how they're going to keep people from putting those stable coins to work to be able to generate returns for people that want to hold stable coins with certain people. I think Coinbase could end up winning out on that. I wish they would hurry up and come to some type of an agreement so that we could get this thing going. But if they don't, to your point, eliminating capital gains on taxes for crypto would be great. American-based crypto is what Trump has really talked about eliminating capital gains tax on. So if it's not a domestic onshore crypto, I don't know that we get that benefit. Ripple's been here the whole time. They haven't left. XRP was issued here in the US. There are other digital, and I also don't know how you determine what is a US-based crypto, right? There's a lot of people that set stuff up in Cayman and issued the assets there, or offshore in Dubai or Singapore or somewhere else in the world. The top 20 projects outside of Bitcoin and XRP are international. I don't know how they're going to determine what that designation is for which ones are tax-free here in the US. I would love it though. And I do think that for the payment networks and those assets that settle value, probably makes a lot of sense in order for them to actually work in the application that they're supposed to be used in. As an example, there's going to be fluctuations in value of XRP. I don't know if you've ever seen XRP, it's very quick, settles on the other side, but there's still a little bit of difference in the price. Even if you bought, transferred, sold immediately, you're still going to have thousandths of a penny that are different. And if banks and institutions are sending millions of transactions a day, probably going to add up, right? There's going to be some that are down, some that are up. And if you were to sell out, even though it settles almost instantly, that's going to rack up one direction or the other. And so I think if they just removed the capital gains tax, that makes it super simple for the banks and institutions to use this stuff. Now, I don't know if they will be look, it's only in the application and using the asset that you're allowed to do this, or if they'll say for investment purposes also, just in general, it's tax-free. I don't know. We'll have to watch and find out, but I am hopeful, just like everybody else is, that we'll see tax-free capital gains on your crypto. Roughnet says, what do you think about Japan selling gold to keep their finances okay for a while? If things get bad, inflation on food and supplies, what are you doing to prepare your family? Thanks. Good questions. I don't think the Bank of Japan will sell their gold. I don't know why they would. I guess they could buy their own treasuries if they sold gold in order to prop up the value of the yen, but they could just raise interest rates, right? Like I think that they're going to raise interest rates. They need to. Their economy needs them to. They'll move out of stagflation. They'll do great. Like, I'm happy for them. I think that they need it. And they just know that the reverse carry trade's going to unwind, and they don't want to be the bad guy. But it's coming. I think they're going to do it. When it comes to the inflation side of things for food and supplies, what am I doing to prepare? I don't know that it's going to last for forever. Like I just told you guys earlier, I think we're in for a deflationary collapse. So what does that actually mean? It means a complete repricing across everything. It means the value of assets come down tremendously. Real estate, stocks, equities, bonds, gold, silver, all of it comes down in value relative to your dollars. And the reason for that is all of the additional leverage that's in the system will get sucked out when the reverse carry trade unwinds. Tens of trillions of dollars that are put to work in these markets that have bid up prices will come flooding out. And things are going to have to come down because there are going to be a bunch of people that are out of work. There's going to be a period of time where AI steps in here, and or we have a depression, deflationary depression, where people don't have jobs. It's going to be a bad situation for people that aren't prepared, that don't have positions in certain things in order to be able to benefit from the outcomes that are going to happen. So investing in the right things would be a great way to be able to offset some of what's going to happen in that deflationary collapse and repricing of markets globally. I've talked about a $50 silver, a $2,100, $2,200 gold. People don't like those numbers. They want number go up. I say number go down. But I don't know that it'll be long lived. Okay, so I think it's just going to come back. I think it'll be a V bottom out of there. I do think that they're going to move into these protocols. They're going to kickstart the velocity of money. They'll be able to pull back into money supply because there's two components to inflation. One is the amount of money moving around into money supply. Number two is the velocity of money. So how fast that dollar is exchanging hands across an economy. Right now, velocity of money is like dead. Lowest it's ever been. People are hoarding cash. They're uncertain. They don't want to put it to work in markets. They don't know where to put it. They're holding it. There's a lot of people with money on the sidelines, including Warren Buffett. People are scared because they don't know what markets are going to look like. They don't have the confidence to invest. So they would rather hide the money in their refrigerator or their mattress or their bank account and sit on it and wait for opportunities, which I don't blame them for that, right? Like if there's a deflationary collapse and things reprice against the dollar and your dollars are worth more and you can buy more assets, it's a great place to be in cash when that happens. Will the dollar collapse? I think there's going to be some volatility in the bond market. Michael Gayad, brilliant economist, CFP, he's a CFA, Certified Financial Analyst. If you don't follow him over there on Twitter, shout out to Michael. You should go follow him. He's an acquired taste. He's saying the same thing as me, just a little more loudly than I say it, a little more flamboyant. But I do like his stuff, and he's in agreement with me. We're going to see a deflationary collapse here and a repricing of markets and assets. And when that happens, we're going to have to move into this new financial paradigm where back-end settlement, kickstarts the economy, and we're able to, jump up GDP pretty quickly. With the advent of AI and blockchain and all these other technologies, which are inherently deflationary, by the way, they'll be able to print money in opposition to that to be able to hold price stability in the economy, which, Elon's talked about high universal basic income. That's exactly how that happens. Is we have huge deflationary pressures by technology and the advancements that we have there. and they're able to print money in opposition to that to be able to hold price stability across an economy, and then use an AI to determine, where the discrepancies in an economy are and incentivize and disincentivize spending in those sectors. It's the reason that the Soviet Union collapsed, is they couldn't appropriate resources correctly. They just blanket resources across stuff. So not a fan of socialism or, communism. Technocracy, I can see how that could work. Maybe we're headed that direction from a democracy here in the U.S. We'll have to see how things play out. Peter Thiel thinks that we are. So Peter Thiel tends to get what he wants. So have to see. K27 says, Jake, I'm starting to lose hope. Give us hope. We're on the 5-yard line, my man. Every single thing that I've talked about in the domino theory is literally playing out real time. It's slow. Okay. It's a little more methodical than I thought it was going to be, but that's probably a good thing. That's probably keeping it from being a really bad situation. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay if they play it a little more methodical and the dominoes kind of fall, and then there's some reverberation, and then another domino falls, and there's some reverberation, and another domino falls, and they're not just boom, 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 boom. I do think it'll speed up. I think once Japan raises their interest rates, you're going to see things move very quickly after that, because they're going to have to. But until that point, they're going to kick the can and delay what they can in order to be able to, position themselves for the least amount of collateral damage when all that unwinds. B Mark H3 says, bro, how much longer? My whole world is falling apart around me. Devil trying to get me to sell. Please call someone to get this thing going. Dude, if I could make a call and make it happen, believe me, I would be the first person to make that call. 589 on the super chat. Shout out to you. Appreciate you, Mark. Look, how do I say this? I message people that I think might be in somewhat of control frequently, but I try not to abuse those relationships. I've been very, blessed and grateful to be in rooms, to have conversations with professionals, at a lot of these large organizations that like and love. And I don't want to ever burn those bridges or do anything to make them not want to deal with us, right? So I have to navigate that carefully. But yeah, if I could give somebody a call to flip the switch, you believe me, I definitely would. Rick Johnson says, JC, last Wednesday after the live, a lot of bozos in the chat were saying the reverse carry trade would never happen. Every time yen gets to 160, Bank of Japan steps in to bring it down. Please address the folly before people buy this bunk. Look, I'll just say it this way. There were countless people who came on and said, in my comments across the board, didn't matter social media platform, that Trump would never allow oil to skyrocket. He would never allow that before midterms. He'll never allow the stock market to fall. Bah, 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 bah. It's not Trump that's in control of this stuff. And look, this is his last term. He's not getting reelected. There's no 3 terms. Okay. So he can do whatever he wants that's in the long-term benefit of the nation and
or himself
and his family. Look, I'm not here to make, bones about that. But when it comes down to it, just for somebody to say that those things can't happen, they really don't understand macroeconomics, and they don't understand what the long-term outcomes need to be in order for this to work out. Like I've said before, if this doesn't happen, we move into a bad spot. You have a deflationary collapse and stagflation globally. It would take us decades to recover from that. There would be no credit. Don't think about getting a loan, because you're not going to get one if things shake out that direction. So look, people can hem and haw and say what they want, but at the end of the day, I can't say that I know this is exactly how it's going to play out, but I feel pretty confident that this is how it's going to play out. Otherwise, I wouldn't come out here continuously and talk about it. So again, appreciate you bringing it up. And we are close to 160. I think when we get closer to 161, the Bank of Japan, they'll be stepping in. Power lines, XRP, must be a lineman. I like it. He says, since we're all getting rich next month, borrowed against XRP making payments seems like the payments would be too high to justify borrowing, 12 to 15%. So just sell, or where do you get better returns? Explain more. So you don't have to borrow against your whole position. So let's do some math real quick. Let's say you had, call it 100,000 XRP, just for easy math here. And you're going to take a loan against 25% of that. Okay. Your loan's at 12 to 15% against 25% of that. So it's $1,000 XRP. Just humor me. Okay. So you got $100 million. You're going to borrow 25 million. The LTV on that's, call it, 80%. So you're able to borrow $20 million at low end 12% interest. Well, for easy math, we'll make it 10% interest. Okay. It's a little bit lower than what you just mentioned here. But again, after it's a high price, I think they'll underwrite it much lower, even lower than 10%. So we'll say 10% on $20 million. We'll do 12%. That way it's monthly payments. So 12% would be 1% a month of 20 million. It'd be $20,000, $200,000 a month. The rest of your XRP, the $75 million worth of XRP that you would have, could be put to work at, call it 4%. Very conservative, low returns. But because it's 3 times as much, the 4% that you're earning off of the 75% could service the debt at a 12% interest rate on the 25%. And that's how you would structure that, right? Like, you're not going to borrow against the whole thing. You're going to borrow against a portion of it, take the other portion of it, and put it to work somewhere where conservatively it makes enough money to be able to offset those interest payments for you. Then you have your cake and eat it too. You borrow the $20 million, don't have to pay it back. The other XRPs being put to work to pay the loan back for you. You get to the end of the note because it's an interest-only simple note, and you just roll it on the same collateral. Or if you have more money 12 months from then, and XRP is $10,000, then you could borrow another zero, right? And do the same thing, rinse and repeat for the next year. Again, not advocating that anybody does this, okay? I'm just laying out some numbers and ways that you could structure it in order to be able to service the debt and still be able to borrow against it. I think that that's how a lot of people are going to be working this. And then in addition to that, if I get what I want to happen, you will be able to borrow against the XRP that is earning interest, kind of like taking a HELOC out on a rented home, right? So if somebody's in the home, you borrow against the equity in that house, they are making payments to be able to rent the home. You're using that to service the debt, free money, right? So that's the dream, is you're able to put your XRP to work in liquidity pools or other DeFi protocols and then borrow against your interest in the liquidity pool or the DeFi protocol. And it's spitting off 8 to 10% a year to be able to service the debt for, what you borrowed against, tax-free. And then you could do your whole bag, right? But if it can't be rehypothecated and you can't borrow against your interest in the liquidity pools or the DeFi, then it's probably going to need to be separated out. And you're probably going to need to be a little bit more strategic about how much you're borrowing against and how much is being put to work. And again, if you want better people than me, right? I'm just, I know enough to get in trouble. You should speak with Digital Wealth Partners. We have 30 advisors over there. All of them are licensed and trained to be able to work with people in this capacity to make sure that you're making the best decisions for you and your family. Turning 65, they say, hey, Jake, with everything about to play out, like you just said, with the unwind, is price appreciation inevitable? Or can we still see no price appreciation with Clarity Act? Thanks. I am very confident that you will see price appreciation before the Clarity Act. And I will continue to state that. There are a lot of people out there that don't believe that, and that's okay. I don't even know that the Clarity Act is going to get passed this year. Cynthia Loomis came out this morning and said that she thinks it's done and they're going to pass it soon, which great if it does. But I can tell you she also said the same thing at SALT last year. And she said it would pass in 2025. Here we are, April of 2026, still no Clarity Act. If they do not get it passed in the next 2 months, highly unlikely we're going to see a Clarity Act passed here in 2026. Probably going to be 2027. And that's not to say that we're not going to see the implementation of these networks. I think you have enough guidance from the SEC and the CFTC, joint guidance that the majority of these digital assets are commodities, 16 of them listed in the joint release that they put out. Got banks and the OCC leaning in. Once these protocols are adopted and the assets are used, it would be very difficult, like literally impossible, for the next administration to come in and pass or codify other laws to be able to remove them. Once they're implemented, it's game over. It's done. It's with us for the next 1,000 years type stuff. So, again, I'm not overly concerned about the Clarity Act, even though others out there are. Truth of Hearts says, wait, bet with scams? April Fools? Not April Fools. Yeah. So you guys are always nice enough to tell on me. I got on here, I guess it was Monday last week, one of the two, and said, hey, talked about the bet and losing and paying those people back. And I said, if Scams was willing to do it again, which I didn't think he would be interested in, I would take the bet. And sure enough, somebody passed him the video and he made a post about it. And I was like, all right, well, can't back down now. I opened my big mouth. So here we are again. We do have another bet with Scams for $750 XRP by the end of the year. And again, I just want to be very clear about this. This is not a price prediction. I'm not putting out any price predictions. I just went with the same bet that we had last year, literally the same terms. So I'm not saying that it's going to get to 750 by the end of the year. Just like Polymarket. Okay, when Polymarket comes out and they have a prediction market and people can bet both ways, that doesn't mean that Polymarket's coming out and making, advocating that this is going to happen. It's just a wager between two individuals, and I think I'm going to win. I wouldn't have made the bet otherwise, but irrespective, this is not a price prediction for XRP. Just for the attorneys. Sam says 3 a.m. night shift again. Member of the mastermind. Want to say thank you for all the info and keeping my 3 a.m. breaks worth staying awake for. Thanks, Legend. Appreciate you, man. Hopefully you're over there in the UK. You got to be, if it's 3 a.m. right now, 6 hours ahead of me. So appreciate you tuning in, and the shout out. Keep working. It'll be worth it when it all plays out for you. John Jags says Monica Long said XRP was going full-blown usage this year. Has anyone followed up with her to see if she still feels the same way? Look, I don't know what you know about Monica Long. I've seen her speak multiple times at Swell. She's getting better. She does a good job reading the teleprompter. But, all that to say, she doesn't say things unless she is absolutely sure on them. I've never seen her retract anything. Anything she's ever said the first time, she has doubled down on. So I wouldn't think that her opinion on that would have changed in any capacity. I mean, hell, we're only a quarter in here into 2026. And believe me, just like everybody else, I'm ready for it to happen. Okay. But good things take time. And we do need real macroeconomic events to play out to see the prices we're all hoping for. Jeff Dunn says, friend just returned from Japan 2 days ago. Everything great there. No panic. No one drives. Price of oil doesn't matter to Japanese average person. Your thoughts? Why does the Bank of Japan unwind versus slow no shock? it's really about the narrative and the yen versus the dollar. So energy prices going up there in Japan for oil lower the value of the yen versus the USD. The dollar just stays stronger. Once we're at the upper bound of that, around 160, which is where we're at, the Bank of Japan has intervened in the past every single time we've reached those levels. That would, play into the fact that they're probably going to do the same here. So I would expect that they do, irrespective of the average person there in Japan. But I will say this: oil matters, and the reason it matters is the transportations of goods and food. You need oil or energy to move a train, unless it's coal. You need, and they have magnetic trains there, so that's probably not a good example. There's still trucks that drive around there in Japan, and you have ships moving goods from other places to Japan that also use oil in order to power their engines. So the cost of transporting the goods themselves with higher energy costs goes up, and that translates to higher costs for the consumer, whether they drive a vehicle or not. So that's what the Bank of Japan's looking at. The CPI did come out there in Japan today, and their expected was 1.8. They came in at 1.7. I don't believe that. I think it's malarkey. I call the CPI the CP lie because they don't factor in a bunch of things like they did back in the 70s. They've continued to remove stuff to their benefit to be able to keep it, in a reasonable range, even though inflation's always much higher. Actual inflation's higher than 2%. Real Jake, again, he says, "Hey Jake, is Japan manipulating the yen?" Noticed, we already answered this one. Appreciate you on the super chat, Jake. Rick Johnson, he says, "Jake, I want to pass away peacefully in my sleep, like my grandfather, not screaming in terror like the passengers in his car." Oh my gosh. It's a good joke, though. It's a little morbid, but it's pretty good. Moo Phoenix XRP says, "Hey Jake, greetings from Massachusetts." Awesome, dude. They say or lady. I'm getting in trouble, giving genders to stuff or people on here. So I'm going to keep it gender neutral. They say, "I recently opened an LLC, but I need someone to guide me through opening the business account and Uphold. They're asking for a few documents, and I don't know where to find. Thanks for everything." Wait a couple weeks. We're literally going to have a white labeled solution of Uphold's app. We will have a concierge that'll help walk you through the onboarding process with that. If you have any questions, we'll have a full Q&A deal. We make it streamlined and easy for you to be able to spin up the bank account because we have all the documentation and all the stuff around it. Make it very simple. So if you just want to give it a couple weeks, we'll be able to get you onboarded over there under the DAG app, which will eventually, originally be a web portal. But over the long term, we will have a mobile app alongside that. DFW Mike, my man, he says, "Good evening, boss. Sophia has just put my buying on hold for house upgrades. Wish she was coming this weekend so you could XRP financial educate her. I'm having buying withdrawals. See you tomorrow. Safe travels, bro." Appreciate that, man.
Well, yeah, Sophia. I'm right there with you.
My wife is advocating for Sophia. We did that this year. A lot of the strife in our relationship, my wife and I, came from not taking care of things around the household. And I forewent buying XRP this last year on a couple different occasions in order to be able to facilitate that for her. And I will tell you, happy wife, happy life is a thing. And again, that's why I got my tea. She's a nice lady sometimes. She can be mean too. Jim Rickards talks about a 150T secret U.S. trust from 1873. He also claims Trump will use it after winning a 2024 Supreme Court ruling. Are you aware? What's your thoughts about this? $150 trillion secret trust from 1873. I'll say this. There are way richer people and families than you can even fathom than the people that are on the Forbes list. So for there to be hidden wealth that's been stockpiled or taken back or put in a different position would be no surprise to me. The amount of abundance that we have is ridiculous. And people hoard it, right? So don't be that way on the other side of price appreciation. Circulate your money. And I'm not saying spend it, because if you spend it, it goes away, but circulate it, because when you circulate it, it comes back to you. There are definitely a lot of players out there that have significant wealth far beyond your imagination. And for there to be a trust that has that much in it, it's definitely a possibility. Would not surprise me. We've got MN Hawk says, when clarity passes, could Ripple burn XRP instead of giving it away? No. So Ripple does not have control over the XRP itself. They run 3 validators on the network. There's 35 UNL validators. They have to have an 80% consensus in order to pass an amendment on the network. In order to burn the escrow, they would have to vote on it. And 80% or 29 of the validators would have to vote yes. So Ripple by themselves, controlling 3 of the validators, they can't really do anything. They can't burn it. They can escrow it. They can lock it. They can give it away. They can transfer it. But they cannot burn it without putting it to a vote for the UNL validators. And actually, David Schwartz, I'm not just blowing smoke here. Like, David Schwartz has explicitly said these words. Well, not verbatim, but pretty close in the tweets. I've been around for 6 years at this point, since 2020, and been watching David Schwartz and many other people from Ripple, and gone back and read tweets from 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016. But yeah, I don't remember what year he came out and said that, but it would have been maybe in 22 would be my guess of when he talked about that, because there was a few people on Twitter that had asked him. Jayhawk Nation, Rockhawk Jayhawk, they say research technocracy. It sounds like a tech oligarch just wrapped in a new word and rebranded. Got to call a spade a spade. Love what you do for the community. Don't trust Epstein's group. I would agree with that mantra. Probably a good idea. And again, just go Google technocracy. It's not what you think. I thought maybe it was like an AI overlord. It's actually engineers, very intelligent people, professionals, and high level of expertise in certain domains that would be elected or put into certain positions on a board. And then they that board elects I don't want to say supreme leader, that's not the word, but like director, chairman of the board. And then they are the ones that end up making the decision. What?
Supreme leader.
So, yeah, the supreme leader. It's not the right word, but it's basically what it is.
It's fine.
Grateful Pops says, eternally grateful for all that you do for my family and the community. Thank you, man. Thank you for the kind words. I love this. I love getting on here. I get a lot of fulfillment from it. And again, if it wasn't for good people like you that want to come on here and care what I had to say, then, none of this matters. So thank you. He says, still in the process of onboarding. Can I physically bring a cold wallet to my fund account at the Dallas office? We can have Tish come in.
Yeah, she would help.
Yeah, Trish can come in and help you transfer it if you wanted to come into the Dallas office. I know that can be a little overwhelming, especially moving stuff if you're not used to doing that. I had one the other day. Let me tell you, sent about $200,000 to the wrong address. was not a fun experience. Luckily, the person that I sent it to was cool and I knew them and they sent it back. But man, like, if they could have just been like, didn't hear you, not talking to you anymore, and walked away with that, it would have been a sad day. But there are good, ethical, honest people out there. Few and far between, but there really are out there. There's a lot of them in the mastermind, I'll tell you that. Mr. Legacy says, actually, it's an honest aim. He says, Mr. Legacy, hi to the tea lady. Son is trying to use a 2025 XRP 14K wash loss. His accountant says not allowed as crypto is property, not security. Who can do this? Or did I not understand it? Blessings. Appreciate the question. If you sold in a loss last year, that is a capital loss on property or capital asset that you can roll forward on this year's gains. Or you could have other gains last year that is used to offset your losses or offset your gains. So I don't know who your accountant is. Sounds like somebody that is not necessarily well equipped to understand crypto. But I would think you guys would be using Dylan Knock. I think that's who y'all used. Who's up there at Wilk CPA up north. He does a great job. If you guys need a CPA, if you need tax services, we offer those. We have those on our website over there at digitalfamilyoffice.io. We have a partner that we work with, but if they can't handle you and it's a more complex situation, we'll send you over to Dylan and his group over there at Wilk CPA. I'd get with them, honest aim. And again, I talked about this before, but we'd love to see you over there in the mastermind. If you guys are watching this and you want to check it out, it's no contract. It's month to month. If you use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, gets you the first month for $2. They're in the group. Try it out. If you don't like it, cancel at any time. But over 16,000 people stay there every single month because of the value we provide in that group. So if you want to try it out, again, we would love to have you on the other side of price appreciation, locking it down on the other side of a $10 XRP. It'll be invite only and much more expensive. We got the 3 digits. They say XRP to $100 by December 2025. Jay Claver, I'm not perfect. Jay Claver 2026. It's pretty accurate. Look, I think people are going to give me some grace here in 2026. If I'm within a year, Michael Burry was off 2 years. Okay. I have been talking about the domino for a little over 2 years now. March 2nd of 2024 was when I had originally put out that theory. And we've seen many of those things play out. We have XRP ETFs. We have a stablecoin bill that was passed in 2025, the Genius Act. We have the Strait of Hormuz getting shut down and oil prices skyrocketing. A lot of the things that I talked about in that original domino theory have already come to pass or are right on the precipice of passing. So again, timing's not perfect. I don't think anybody's perfect on timing. And if they are, they probably know too much and they're probably going to get taken. So, maybe give me a little grace on the timing. We are about an hour in now. If we don't have a ton of super chats, I will start taking a few questions. We'll hang out about an hour and a half with you guys tonight before we wrap it up. XRP Maxi 1965 says, given Japan are so darn slow, do you think a 25 basis point raise will be enough to trigger the reverse carry trade? Monica Long knows what's coming in 2026. She sure does. I don't think 25 bips is going to do it. I think they're going to go for the whole enchilada. If they're going to do it, might as well, right? Because it's going to unwind anyway. Might as well benefit your own economy. So let's go for it. I think they're going to go 75 basis points all the way up to 1.5% on their interest rate when they pull the trigger. This person says, do you agree to spam double or nothing bet. Spams. I'm assuming you mean scams. Yeah, I did agree. We are shook hands on it. Shook hands on the internet, and we will see how it plays out here in 2026. I think I'm going to be victorious this time. Just saying. Liners has shared the code. A couple people have talked about the LLC tonight. If you want to work with us to set that up, we would love to work with you. You don't have to work with us. We are one option among many. You can reach out to attorneys in Wyoming if you want to get this done. We've done more than anybody else. We've done over 8,000 of these LLCs to be able to manage digital assets the correct way, compliant, be able to help you mitigate taxes, have creditor protection, anonymity, all the benefits that you get from a Wyoming LLC specific for a holding company that manages alternative investments with a sleeve for crypto. Okay. It's very important when you go to set up a bank account that is how you explain it. Don't say anything about crypto. It is a holding company to manage alternative investments. So equity, it could be private equity, it could be real estate, it could be private credit, private debt. All of those are also alternative assets outside of crypto. It could be gold and silver, But anyway, if you want to work with us to do that, you can use the code 50OFF50OFFDAG LLC. That's 50OFFDAG LLC. Get you everything end to end. Registered agent, EIN, articles of organization, template for the operating agreement, which is the expensive part if you go to an attorney, certificate of good standing, banking memorandum, and corporate veil service or corporate shield service to be able to help you maintain the creditor protection and structure it the right way. And that'll all be done in the app over there with the Uphold app in the near future. Waiting for XRP Moonshot. It's a great name. They say, hey, Jake, hello to you and the Tea Lady, LLC, Trust, Beyond Bird Mastermind. Awesome, dude. Waiting for price appreciation on board with you. Could Swift already be using digital assets to transfer money? In very small quantities. I'm sure that they've trialed it. So that's the whole point here. Like people have talked about this before, that Ripple has used retail. They kind of have. And I'll explain that. So Ripple themselves, if they were the ones that drove the value of XRP, it would be a security of Ripple. They need it to be away from them. They need this to be a decentralized protocol that they leverage for their business. So, selling XRP out on the open market and other people, and knowing that there would be secondary sales of that XRP to create a market and price and value for that XRP was very strategic for them. And retail demand drove enough liquidity into the XRP for them to be able to trial it in these applications like you're talking about. And they need to trial it and make sure that the mainnet works before they can implement it at scale, right? So I would expect that Swift has been trialing XRP through Corda, Ripple, and other counterparties for the better part of the last decade, probably even prior to 2020. So, probably closer to 8 or 9 years that they've been trialing this network to be able to sell this value across borders. So the answer is yes. I do think that, even at the price that we're currently at and previous prices, they have sent transactions over this network to verify that it can work at scale and that they can adopt it when the time comes. We've got Santos. He says, hey, Jake, I'm seeing a growing narrative about global blackout or cyber attack being used as a reset to move data into the new system. Thoughts? Man. Look, if there's a cyber attack, there's going to be somebody that they hold accountable for that. If you want me to put my tinfoil hat on, which I will, just because you've asked, it's an intelligent question. We're at the peak of a solar cycle. Maybe they're waiting for a solar flare to be big enough. There's been some big ones this cycle that have caused, significant auroras all the way down to like Texas at my house. Like we saw red in the sky in Texas. Very unusual. And that's the electromagnetic field around the Earth being impacted by those CMEs. If there was a large enough solar flare, it could absolutely impact global electronics, very similar to the Carrington event. I think that was in like 1964. 1864, not 1964. That's the last time that we've had any type of huge blackout across telecommunications. So could they use that? Sure. I don't think that they're going to launch EMPs or have a global cyber attack or any of that. I think that people saying those things are probably fear mongering and also believe that there's going to be a World War III and then we're all doomed and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that at all. But I do think, Hillary Clinton said it best. She said, never let a good crisis go to waste. Okay. So, I think that that's the circumstance in which that could play out. That's just my 2 cents and my tinfoil hat on it. You can make your own decisions. No one home, 589 on the super chat. They say, Mastermind Carbon One. Thank you for being part of the community, brother, or my lady, either one. How does it work if I borrow multiple millions of dollars against my XRP from my LLC and send it to myself? Is that still maintaining the corporate veil? So you would lend it to yourself out of the company and it would be owed back, or you could pay yourself because it's passed through taxation on the LLC. You're just not going to be able to write any of that off if you do it that way. So you could borrow the money. It's tax-free to borrow it because it's passed through taxation. You also wouldn't owe anything on that. I would probably structure it as a debt note from yourself due back to the company. That way, when you do pay it back, those interest payments are, there'll be interest payments back to the original note, right? So it's passed through. Again, if you borrowed it, should be good. But you would ideally use a portion of it for business purposes and not just for personal stuff. And you would probably, if you are going to pay it to yourself, take it out in dividends. You could, if you're the owner of the company, you could leverage the assets or the equity and borrow against it. It would be due back to the company, though, if it was done the right way in order to maintain the corporate veil. Jesse Navarro says, hey, Jake, from New Brunswick, I already have an LLC set up through DWP. Awesome. Carbon 2. Glad to see you. Say setting up on a large bag of XRP, 0.01%. What are the advantages? Advantages of setting up a trust before price appreciation? Depends on the type of trust. If you're in New Braunfels, you're down in Texas by me. I'm actually not far from you at all. Right now, I'm in Austin. So a revocable living trust in Texas would get you probate protection. It's not going to get you creditor protection, but that's why you set up the LLC for the creditor protection. Now, if you wanted additional protections, you might set up a dynasty trust, or if you're doing it post-price appreciation, you might do an intentionally defective grantor trust so that you can transfer it in there tax-free over time. Might set up a charitable remainder trust if you have a philanthropic goal or organization that you want to help, but you still want to derive some benefit off of those assets during your lifetime. There's a lot of different trusts that you could potentially set up. And again, I've talked about this before. There's like 80 something different types of trusts here in the US. Those are just a marketing gimmick. In reality, trusts are just a tapestry of clauses that you're weaving that are going to fit you and your family. You can have a 3 strikes trust. You can have a spendthrift trust. You can have, there's all kinds of language that you can put in these. I would get with a good estate planner and have that conversation. If you're sitting on a big bag like that, you said 0.01%. So I'm going to put you above 300,000 XRP. And you probably shouldn't tell people that if this is your real name, Jesse Navarro. I would probably say a little bit more anonymous if you're going to share, what percentage of XRP holders you're in. Again, I appreciate the context. I'm not dogging you. I'm just trying to look out for you. if you think it's going to appreciate very quickly, and you think you're going to have more than $30 million worth of wealth in your personal estate or your taxable estate, it can make a lot of sense to go ahead and set up some type of irrevocable trust and complete the gift, a portion of the equity in the LLC or the assets themselves into the trust. You probably just would want to do the assets if it's prior to price appreciation. One of the ways that you can kind of squeeze the value down of assets post price appreciation is to use the LLC. You can gift a small portion of equity to a couple people because you have minority owners on the cap table at that point. When you get a 409A done, they would squeeze the valuation of the assets 25 to 35%. So if you had $50 million worth of assets inside the company, you would squeeze it down to 30 and you could gift the full amount out of your taxable estate between you and your spouse. So, there's these little techniques and hacks, but they only go so far. If you are that big a holder and you think it's going to $1,000 on the other side of price appreciation, setting something up sooner than later would be ideal, just so that you can, get at least a portion of it out of your taxable estate. But again, there's a give and take, right? Like XRP is $1.30. So $20,000 on a trust or $20,000 on more XRP. I can't tell you what to do. I'm buying XRP. Because I can just pay the taxes if I got that much more XRP. Truth of Hearts says, Jake, KT baby, good to see you. Is hypothetically, if someone was getting separated, hypothetically, do you think they would have a chance to buy out their home by July? I can't give timeframes, KT baby. My attorneys will slap my hand. I'm already skirting a line with the bet with scams. So I'm hopeful for that. Believe me, extremely hopeful for that. April looks like a really good month with the OCC allowing, large banks to hold digital assets on their books. You've got, Evernorth launching here. You've got a lot of things culminating for the beginning of Q2. I've had some conversations with some other large institutions. They're also going to be rolling out things in Q2. June, July is when they're rolling things out. So that tells me that the market's probably more mature at that point, and likely a lot more liquidity and higher prices. But again, they could continue to kick the can. I hope that's not the case, but at this point, I have to undersell you guys on stuff. Rick Johnson says, Jake, honest aim is good. Is a good. Yeah, that's what it says.
Yes.
Brings up some excellent points and makes all of the DAG lives better for everyone. I feel bad for honest aim when someone leaves the lid down. I appreciate that, and I'm sure he does too. Yeah, I don't know if you have a lady in the household, but you better make sure you put the lid down after you've used the banyo. 3D G-Man says, JC, Beyond Broke Mastermind, LLC, bank, domain, site, email, DWP, ever notice Burry's record, 489 profits on the whiteboard? I did not, but that's very interesting that it was 489. It'd been better. It'll been a lot better if it was 589. Glad to be working with you. Excited to have you as a client, and again, appreciate all the support and the kind words here on the live. Mickey, he says, hey Jake, met you and the tea lady in Nashville. It's good to see you again, dude. Our wives hit it off. We both definitely married up. No question. Thanks for all that you do. I would agree. Yeah. So my wife was 26 and I was 20 when we met. So I definitely married up. She's a cougar. And now I'm the oldest man she's ever been with. So Mike Hayden says, hey, Jake, I noticed recently that the short interest on REITs is climbing. Once we see price appreciation, do you think we see total market reprice at the same time? I do, Mike. I think it's going to be a deflationary collapse where you see real estate significantly reduced in cost and values from what they sit at today, along with the stock market and other assets as well. And I think that digital assets will appreciate substantially. There'll be way more ROI, real ROI, on certain digital assets than anything else when the repricing occurs. Again, just my opinion, not financial advice. Make your own decisions, but that's how I'm positioned. Jake Hooten says, good to see you, dude. He says, I've been DCAing enough that I've found myself approaching a year of marriage, and I've not yet taken my wife on a honeymoon. Still, it's starting to get tense here. Keep telling her, it'll pay off, promise, not financial advice. So please, for my well-being, let's go XRP. You're not alone in that. I think a lot of people have sacrificed things and deferred, gratification and pushed things off for a long period of time. And it tends to be, not to say that women don't do this, but I would say that the men more frequently than not are the ones that are willing to defer gratification on stuff and forego things in the short term for longer term gains. But you have to walk a line. Like I said earlier, happy wife, happy life is a thing. If you have your spouse upset with you and causing additional tension in your life, it tends to be a detractor from whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? Like it's difficult to focus on other things or really put your all into something if you have that on the back of your mind. So that's how I look at that. Taking vacations, doing little things, buying small gifts, making sure that your spouse feels appreciated. It goes a long way. And hopefully they reciprocate that by not screaming at you on a regular basis. And then you're able to focus on things and be more productive than you would have been otherwise. So,
This is really turning into a comedy night.
My wife's talking smack from the bed over there. Trish says, Jake, I know you think everyone is good, but please be careful when people ask you to meet up on here. If you don't know them, be really careful. I appreciate that, Trish. I've got guns in all my vehicles, and I'm about 6 foot 230. Not that a gun can't kill me, but I think I can hold my own. I think people would. I mean, how big a boy are you? Just depends on a lot of things. But yeah, no, I appreciate the kind words and the consideration, and I try to be mindful of that. But look, at the same time, like there's a certain, I cannot have the impact that I want to have over my lifetime if I don't go out and meet people and shake hands and talk to people and, have the impact that I want to have. And it comes with some liability associated with that. And so, that's what I signed up for. And we're doing the best we can with what we got. Powerlines XRP, he says, I know your lawyers won't let you say it. Just read it. It is my opinion that XRP is going to a significantly higher price by April 30th of this year. Boom. And there it is. Now it's legal. My wife keeping me from getting in the doghouse.
Jakes are going to have that on their profiles.
Probably. Look, it could absolutely happen. We have everything literally playing out real time for there to be a significantly higher price by the end of April for XRP. But I've thought that for 5 months. So, that was before the strait was closed. The strait's now closed, but we still haven't seen Japan react to it. And that's what we're waiting on. Until Japan raises interest rates aggressively, we're pretty much up against a wall. And the market's going to continue to move in the pattern that it is until that plays out. least that's my 2 cents. And the Clarity Act doesn't matter for that. That's a completely separate geopolitical deal. A.B. Carey says, greetings from Ireland. Very cool. It says, since Clarity seems to limit stablecoin yield for bank licenses, what is the future of current yield accounts like Flare? Tokenized deposits are what I think is going to be the main way that banks and institutions incentivize you to hold assets with them. That's not a stable coin, so it's not regulated under the Genius Act. And tokenized deposits can pay whatever competitive yield you want to pay as a bank. I think that's their recourse. And I think they know that the whole time. I think this is a bunch of back and forth dog and pony show, just to push the Clarity Act out so that it doesn't get passed here in 2026. Just my 2 cents. 3D G-Man says, JC, will the DWP Uphold dashboard be integrated with the Anchorage and replace the on-ramp Invest dashboard? We're building our own portal that currently connects to Securitize. But yes, over the long term, it'll be one centralized, unified application that allows you to see your assets across wherever you're holding them. Also, please push the YubiKey security support. We are implementing that in the near future. We have a full contract with YubiKey. We got about 5,000 YubiKeys that we've purchased for our clients. We've already implemented that two-factor authentication for all of our employees. That's what we're rolling out first to make sure that we have additional safeguards when transferring assets or executing things when they're signing. And we will be rolling that out to the employees. Right now, even what we have for the multi-factor authentication is more secure than anything you're going to get from your traditional advisor. If you have a traditional advisor at Schwab or Fidelity, you're going to call them up and be like, hey, Bob, buy me 300 shares of Tesla. And they're going to be like, sure, Johnny, here's the quoted price. You say, yep, that sounds good. And then hang up, and they bought it for you. There's AI that could, create your voice, replicate you, and issue trades and remove money and do all kinds of stuff at this point. So, the YubiKey is going to be paramount for us to make sure that we're verifying with a biometric. Now, could they chop your thumb off and know your password and do a bunch of other stuff? Sure. But, the other thing that we currently have is a video that you have to record stating some things. The problem that I have with that, which I like the video, don't get me wrong, I think stating passwords on a video is great, and that gets sent out for peer review, and it's good. But what if you're blind, right? What if you could see and then you went blind? You can't read words off of a screen, right? So somebody else would have to whisper them in your ear, and you would have to state them on the video. Just not practical, right? So the thumbprint YubiKey is a great alternative option. Jake Hooten with the DCA again. We got GA XRP Guy. He says, hey, Carbon 2 member here. Awesome, dude. Glad to see you. He says, with the haircut, will we see the reverse carry trade? How long do you think we could see the XRP dip? Thanks, bud. Look, I've said this before. I wish I knew exactly how this was going to play out. The volatility, I could peg the bottom and the top for you and tell you when to sell and buy. That's not my game. I'm a macros person. I'm not the TA person. If you want that type of stuff, blockchain backer, he's been on point, with what he's talked about over the last year. So kudos to him. I thought we were going to see additional catalysts that would change the outcome of the market. He's been, rock steady on previous market cycles up to this point. I do think that there will come a point where market cycles change and that those dynamics shift, and the chart and the patterns will show something different also. But until that happens, I think he's going to be pretty on point with things. He thinks we're working out a bottom here. He doesn't think we're going to go a whole lot lower. So just for the people that are trying to buy XRP at 10 cents or whatever y'all think it's going to get to, I don't know if that's going to happen. All right. I'm already at the hour and a half. I'm going to take a couple more here and then we're going to wrap it up. Justin, he says, sorry, I got here late. Thoughts on all the important things coming out next month, starting 4/1? I think it's a big month. I think that we're going to see a lot of potentially institutional adoption of digital assets. Banks holding it on their balance sheet. Got Evernorth launching. Got the OCC giving the green light for other stuff. You got the BIS starting to designate these assets. What it looks like to hold them on balance sheets and what type of collateral they are. A lot of big things happening here in Q2 of 2026. Gen X Zero says, looking forward to meeting you in Austin tomorrow. Awesome, dude. Just started the LLC with DWP. Fantastic. Glad to be working with you. And yeah, super excited to see you at the dinner tomorrow. For those that are joining us late, I am here in Austin. That's why, in the hotel room in the background. We do have some golf tomorrow. And then we have a nice dinner that we're hosting for a lot of the Carbon 3 and Carbon 2 individuals, along with some other high net worth individuals here in Austin. So if that sounds cool to you, we would love to have you in the mastermind. We do more in real life events than any other community out there in crypto, besides maybe Crypto Mondays. Shout out to Crypto Lou. I think it's a great group. We try to provide more value in there than I've ever gotten in any other mastermind that I've been a part of. And I've been a part of 5 or 6 other masterminds. There were certain things about those I liked, and I tried to implement all those things here. We have a call every single night of the week, depending on what level you're in. Even if you're in social, you get every Saturday morning and every Monday morning. Those are recorded. You can listen back to them later. You get business resources, financial education, access to private deals if you're in Carbon 1 or higher. And again, lots of, in real life events and other perks, access to our Rolodex of people. If you need help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. If you're there, part of the community, we want to make sure that people there get a ton of value. And again, that's apparent by the 16,000 people that stay there in the community every single month. It's month to month, no contract. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, or you just want to try it out, you can go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar. Here it is on the screen. It's at the top, but share it there. Living Legacy. Appreciate you. Again, if you need the LLC, like the other gentleman that I'm going to meet here in Austin tomorrow, we'd love to work with you on that. You can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and use the code 50OFF, 50 OFFDAG LLC. That's 50 OFFDAG LLC. And then last but not least, if you have at least $100,000 in digital assets, tomorrow is the last day that is going to be the minimum over there at Digital Wealth Partners. So if you have at least 50,000 XRP or at least $100,000 in crypto, they would love to work with you. You can be an individual or have a business account, either one. You can also set up a trust. They have the capability to do all of that. Get institutional custody there at Anchorage. Assets are segregated, bankruptcy remote, insured up to $100 million per account. Get access to the yield products that we have for Bitcoin and XRP, the return products, the fund for XRP and Bitcoin. We're working on the yield product. You get an advisor, you get financial planning. There's a ton of additional value there, especially if you're in crypto and you don't have an advisor that actually gets what this stuff is. So love to work with you on that. They do IRAs. We also do insurance. We've started that. Carl's done a great job over there at Azure Legacy. If you need a term policy, I've set one up for myself. I have an IUL for my son. I don't tell you guys what to do. I'm just talking about what I'm doing. My term policy is convertible. So if I want to convert that to cash value later on, post price appreciation, hopefully that'll be easily done at that point. And then, we're off to the races with the Rockefeller method, just like a lot of the other people we work with. So with that, I'm going to wrap it again. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday. Please like, subscribe, share if you did find value in this. And we will see y'all Wednesday night. Hope you have a wonderful week. God bless. And we'll see you on the next one.